Good afternoon. It is indeed an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be before you. I'm normally lecturing at this time, so if I go into lecture mode, just bear with me. I normally say, okay, let's take out some notes. Let's get ready to take some notes. But I want to thank you. This is one of the biggest honors that I've ever had to address you, and I want to thank the university. I want to thank Dr. Franklin and Dr. Autry, and thank all of those who are heading this up, to the Graetz family, who are very close to my family. Pastor Graetz has preached at my church several times, and hope to get him back real soon. And my daughter is one of their goddaughters, and so my daughter's finishing sophomore at Tuskegee University, so they're going to be getting a nice little request for tuition help, which they agreed to help us. We need all the help we can get. I've been at Alabama State University since 1993, and that's been a minute. And I can tell you that I've seen a lot of people come and go, a lot of students come and go, and I can't think of a more beloved community than the HBCU community. I was actually born on HBCU campus, on Tuskegee University's campus at John Andrews Hospital. And so my mom, who went to Tuskegee, and my dad, who was in Tuskegee because he was a biochemist at the VA hospital. And as the story goes, my dad had a drop-top Thunderbird and was a snazzy dresser, and he was driving down Old Montgomery Road, and he saw this little freshman walking down the street, and that was it. I came along not too long after that. Yeah, my dad was a Fisk graduate, so we HBCU all the way. But my dad was a biochemist, my mom was in biological research at Tuskegee. So I grew up on the campus, and I grew up in different professors' offices. So when I got bored with hanging out with my mom, I would say, can I go to the potato chip man's office? Well, when you're little, you don't know that that's the department chair of biology, or the dean of physical science, or over ag department. You just know them by, the way that they address you. But the HBCU has been my life. And watching all of that genius in one place and how they interact with each other is very important. This presentation has many different topics because what I did was I just crammed a whole lot into one of the presentations that I give. But how many of you have ever heard of epochal consciousness? Because the title of the paper that I'm reading from is Martin Luther King, The Beloved Community, and Epochal Consciousness, right? How many of you have ever heard of a term called the Anthropocene? Anthropocene. Okay, well, those terms are terms that I learned from hanging out with my homeboys and homegirls in the earth science department. And so when I in social sciences, or when anyone in social sciences hangs out with someone in the earth sciences, you're going to have a synthesis of ideas because we're able to share. And you throw someone in from the theater department, you really got something going on. But I say all that to say that when I was growing up, it was nothing for professors from different departments to interact with my parents who were in the sciences. And you pick up so much from people of different backgrounds and different understandings. If you've spent countless hours in your degree area, you should have something to offer to someone else who's interested in learning, even though that person might not even go to college or might not even. It is the quest for knowledge that puts us together, the desire for us to know. So I come to you really having picked up some things from Dr. Allison, who is an environmental geographer, and other people, Dr. Mark Dugo, who is an ecologist at Mississippi Valley State University, and other people. So we kind of blended our disciplines to provide a model for decision making so we can move forward. And one of the things, the reason why I mentioned my diverse academic background, my dad eventually got a law degree, I have a law degree, so we have STEM and social sciences in my family, right? Well, what happens when STEM and social science come together? And who is the person that best fits the model of a person that can have one foot in the social sciences and one foot in the earth sciences? Martin Luther King. And his model of the beloved community is actually what we call in the earth sciences an epochal consciousness. And when we say epochal consciousness, we mean a particular way of thinking for a particular time period, right? Now, how many of you have heard people say that Martin Luther King was way ahead of his time? Yeah. All right. Is it possible that we were way behind ours? And is it possible that that sector which he was in tandem with could better identify and understand what he was saying than those people whom he was representing? You see, that's the power of knowledge. And so Tuskegee University also comes on the scene because they had a Dr. Eubanks there. He was a philosophy professor, and he was the one that actually inspired a lot of the Tuskegee Institute Advancement League, who joined up with SNCC in the Black Belt. He challenged them on an epistemological question. What role does knowledge play in the life of a people? That's an awesome question. The late Dr. Gwen Patton asked my students that question at Florida, and they're still writing papers on it to this day. What role does knowledge play in the life of a people? And so because I'm a preacher, and I know y'all took up the offering before I got here, we quote Ephesians 6 and 10. We quote it in church all the time. It says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the rulers of darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." There's no reason to be nonviolent when you're fighting a spirit. We have to understand the nature of the fight. And so the apostles knew that they could not defeat the traditions of their people, which had run their course, and they could not defeat the Roman army that had global superiority with the little knives that they used to clean fish. Come on now. They knew that. And they knew that any violent revolutionary attempt would end in disaster. But they also understood that they had a weapon called knowledge, epistemology, episte in the Greek, which is where we get the term faith and belief from. How many of you know faith and belief are knowledge-based? Yeah, if you define that word in the Greek, faith and belief is epistos. It means knowledge. But it is a category of evidence that's unverifiable. It's there, but the origin and source of it is a mystery. But you can't deny the fact that it's not there. So when we talk about how we fight, one of the things that I hope to do today is I hope to, by merging STEM and the social sciences, using Martin Luther King as the template, his words, we hope to bring back the use of critical thinking in solving social problems. Amen. See, scientists are a lot of things, but one of the things that they're not emotional. Emotion plays no role in their determination of facts. They are concerned with the data. They're concerned with what the facts say. And so a lot of our activism is so emotional that we forget the fact that we have to be knowledge-based in what we do. That's why there has to be a remerger of the preachers, the politicians, and the professors. We've got to go off in a room somewhere, just like other people do, and come up with scientific methodology and strategy for addressing the issues as they present themselves today. Amen. Martin Luther King's words, I think, are those words that unify that aspect of our society that has been so detrimentally harmed by the divisions that we have within ourselves. Martin Luther King gave a speech, wrote a piece called "Where Do We Go From Here?" Now this picture is important because the parents of this little boy, Scott, they actually met in my class. Brandon looked at Tiffany and I couldn't get him to read anything. I couldn't get him to do it. He fell madly in love with her. They got married. That's Scott. We're in Connecticut. I'm his godfather. I married him. You know, I'm a preacher too. And they flew me up to Connecticut to show me how good they were doing. Show me their house, show me their car, show me their place of business, and she was producing so many successful people. And we have to do a better job of promoting it. Well, Sky had run ahead of me because I was older than him and we were walking downtown. And it's interestingly, we're downtown Hartford, Connecticut, and he stopped right there at the bridge. And he stood and he just gazed over that chasm. And he actually had to have help. I actually had to pick him up and carry him over until he understood that the footing was strong enough to hold him. Now, the only thing that changed, you notice, is the ground, the color of the ground, and the aesthetics, right? Is it possible for somebody to place a bridge that causes people to do that? Yeah. Psychologically? Let me ask you this question. Are there people with such an understanding of the human mind that they know how to throw up mental bridges? Yes, sir. And when we talk about the accelerated consciousness, we're talking about young people beginning in 1950 who had an explosion of genius. And that genius is still continuing today. But is there a way to select a demographic and throw up bridges that cause them to pause long enough for them not to be in tandem with the rest of the world? Come on, man. Is that possible? Yes or no? Okay, so you have to now identify what that is. When the Montgomery bus boycott was over, one of the most critical points of our existence is what happened after we thought we got a victory. Yes, sir. After we thought we got one. Now let me say why I put it in those terms. I put it in those terms because when you talk to the people in earth sciences, they're going to give you an entirely different interpretation of the same facts. Now, in 1943, there was a farm markets bill that was passed, and Dr. John Broadway, is he still here? Where's Dr. Broadway? Listen, that is one of the most underappreciated researchers in this area. The research that he has done is so critical because, and Dr. Broadway can back this up, is that in 1943, what year did the Montgomery Boys boycott take place? 10 years prior to something. A chain of events began to happen whereby corporations began to come into the South and they began to lobby for southern cities and southern states to slowly begin to deplete the monetary resources that are going to transportation. Martin Luther King said, and where do we go from here? One of the major problems that our people have in urban areas is mobilization. That's right. Martin Luther King was 20 years ahead of us. He recognized the problem to be not integration or segregation, but mobilization. We can't move when we want to move. Wow. Martin Luther King recognized that. But we're familiar with Martin Luther King, but we don't read Martin Luther King. That's right. How many of us have read a book by Martin Luther King, taken a course on Martin Luther King, scientifically analyzed the logic behind what he was saying? Or did we just treat him like we treat our preachers on Sunday? Boy, sure they preach a good Sunday. Come on. And really can't digest one thing that the preacher has said. So in 1943, you had, and I know I'm going ahead of this because I'm kind of going from what's on the paper. And this paper we're publishing it too, you can get a copy of it. But in 1943, you had the Farm Markets Act, you can look it up, where money started going to building bridges and paving roads. 1950 is critical in this time period that we call the Anthropocene, the age of accelerated genius. 1950 for several reasons, and one of them is that the corporation becomes a monster. It becomes a legal monster. And if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, you will have what is called a corporate ego, but you will not find a corporate morality. Come on now. Ooh. If you look in Black's Law Dictionary, you will find corporate ego. That's what you have in the presidency. Come on now. Come on. And we don't know, listen, we don't know how to engage him because we've never been exposed to a corporate ego. But a corporate ego is a legal personality. It has no morals, it has no values, and you have to approach it as that, and you can't get mad. Because you know what it is that you're dealing with. You just simply have to know the nature, as the apostles did, of who it is they're dealing with. Caesar had no morals. Come on now. Herod had no morals. John the Baptist found that out. He got his head chopped off. So when you're approaching something, you're approaching an it, not a he or she. And so in 1950, corporations were given an ego. And in the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter, there's mentioned a 7-headed beast with 10 horns. Now, in the earth science people would say that's a hydra. See, when you hang out with the biology people, they'll say, yeah, that's a microorganism, that's a hydra. But what do we call that in social sciences? Because it does exist in both planes. You have to know what it is that you're dealing with. It's called a corporation. And if the corporations could take out the mafia, do you realize corporations snatched the gambling industry right from up under the crime families? And the crime families couldn't do nothing about it because they didn't know who to blow up? They did. They lost all of their casinos and they were looking for people to put hits out on, but they didn't know who to put a hit out on because the thing that was created, it had no existence. It's a thing. Ladies and gentlemen, your civil rights movement long time ago was being dictated by a thing. Because when you began to study the lobbying that was taking place in the state of Alabama, as reflected in Dr. Broadway's research, you will see that the bus system in Montgomery was slated to end anyway. Wow. Before Rosa Parks ever took her stand, as it said in the Browder versus Gale court case, when Fred Gray and Charles Langford were doing their cross-examinations, the Public Service Commission folks said, well, it's going to be scrapped anyway. So when we have to understand the fact that there are other things that are influencing. Why did they scrap the bus system? They scrapped the bus system because they wanted everybody to drive cars. And when you began to look at the collapse of urban transportation in the urban area, all of this is in our research. We got tons of this stuff. When you look at the collapse of urban transportation systems, Montgomery, Mobile, Birmingham, and all throughout the South, it was replaced with millions of dollars going to build up roads and build up bridges. Because they wanted everybody to drive cars. And like one of my students said, and when you bring young people into the mix, you've got to be prepared to answer questions. One of my students said, Dr. White, if the Montgomery bus boycott was what it was, why was everybody who were in leadership positions driving cars? Did you catch that question? Were the people who were on the front lines actually a part of the target population? That's a question. The question, those people who were disfranchised were those people who were mobile. They had no cars. They depended on their transportation. Why is that important? Earth science people will say this. Well, that was when all of our emissions started going through the roof. When Martin Luther King was referring to the burning house, the people in the Anthropocene, the people in the earth sciences would say, he's talking about global warming. See how the two have to come together? Because our earth house is burning. And how many of you can relate European colonialism in West Africa? The struggle against apartheid in South Africa. And the struggle against Jim Crow in Selma. How many of you can put the three together and then talk about the pollution that's taking place in the Black Belt as we speak? Yes, sir. That's right. Lord, that's right. I don't have time to go into it. I totally messed up my visuals. But I'll send you. That's all right, I'll send you the visual examples, the data that shows not only how poor the black belt is in certain socioeconomics, we all know that, right? But what about the environmental impact? You see, that's why Sarah Yates is here. Raise your hand, Sarah. You need to get to know her. Because she is a part of a movement that creates citizen scientists. W.B. Du Bois was a citizen scientist. Martin Luther King was a citizen scientist. George Washington Carver was a citizen scientist. So she dropped that term on me last week. We've known each other a week and a half. And 20 minutes into our conversation, I built a whole other research paper around what she mentioned out of the side of her mouth. Because what we need is everybody to know what we think the experts know.
Come on.
That knowledge has to be declassified. And so talking the model of citizen scientists takes the knowledge out of a particular realm and makes it common. Isn't that what Jesus said? What I tell you in secret, shout it from the rooftop. Well, we have to shout from the rooftop that it is Martin Luther King, his words, the beloved community, and what we have here that is the quintessential aspect of our society and our survival. So when we talk about corporations not only did that, but when we read where do we go from here, Martin Luther King used very violent words. He used very violent words in fighting a corporation. He used terms like warfare. You see? He used terms like violence. He used terms like we're in a fight. He was using violent words, but it was an economic war. Martin Luther King was killed because he understood how to fight an economic war. He understood that the Vietnam War, he understood that the Vietnam War was nothing more than an agency to expand global economic interests of the West. He understood that. But you know who understood it before him? Stokely Carmichael.
That's right.
You can never underestimate the role that college students are playing in the evolving epochal consciousness. Because epochal consciousness evolves based off student observation. We minimize Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Nkrumah, and Dr. Lawrence Bennett's influence on Martin Luther King. And we over-amplify the relationship or the influence that Gandhi had on King. Well, I got news for you. Hold on just a minute. Ask me this question, or as we say in Batman, riddle me this.
Come on with it.
Why are the students at the University of Ghana taking Gandhi's statue down?
That's right. It's a race. That's right.
Why have they taken this statue down? Is it possible they have come into a consciousness?
That's right.
Where they have now understood and have gotten the facts
That's right.
of what Gandhi really felt
That's right.
about the South African struggle.
Yeah, that's right.
So now Gandhi is disqualified,
That's right.
in my opinion,
That's right.
from being placed at the same standard as one of our own who has given their blood for the effort. And letters are being sent as I speak to the King Center in Atlanta to take the statue down now too.
Wow.
Why is that the case? The case is because of the fact that when people come into knowledge, as conditions fall, consciousness rises. And people begin to ask questions. And we have to be prepared to provide answers to those questions. Study what Martin Luther King said about the attack that should be posed on A&P Grocery, on Seedless Corporation. He was going directly after those issues. And he said that we're not supposed to throw bricks, but we use picket signs. We use the ballot. He understood political warfare. And so using the vote, but you cannot use the vote without the initial component of organization prior to voting.
That's right. That is right.
And then we organize ourselves around not personalities,
That's right.
but around purpose,
That's right.
but around mission.
Yes.
That's what Martin Luther King was about.
Come on.
And so it is time for us now to study Martin Luther King and study his beloved community, because he was talking about the beloved community as being an epochal event. understanding that those things weren't possible in times past. But the accelerated genius took place at a time when there was no moral equivalent. Which means that the earth got a whole lot smarter. And that's when things went kaput. Because the preacher stopped preaching.
Wow.
And there was no moral equivalent that could counterbalance the explosion of technology that was taking place. See, it was never an issue about whether a fetus was a human being or not until we got the technology to begin to divide that gestation of even beyond the trimester system. So technology can be used positively or negatively. It is a moral question, not a political question, not even a social question of choice, but it is a question of existence, as was the 3/5 compromise, as was the Dred Scott decision, as was the Fugitive Slave Act. The questions of our time are nothing more than transplants of questions that we left unanswered in times past, simply because we have not infused, Sister Fire Rose, we haven't infused our history and our culture into the required curriculum of our students.
Come on.
So how can you say that you cherish your history and your culture when you don't mandate it be taught at all levels of our existence?
That's right.
And when we can graduate college students that know the Star Spangled Banner but don't know the Negro National Anthem,
My Lord. My Lord.
and we're the only people that have a national anthem before we have a nation,
Oh! Oh! Oh!
and then other people are bringing up the reparations argument in an earth science context, and we're ashamed to talk about it in a social science context?
My Lord.
Do I need to repeat that?
Yes.
Earth science people are not ashamed of the reparations argument.
That's right.
Because I hear black people say, I don't want any reparations. And I tell them to give it to me, I'll take it. When other countries in Europe have been repaired for the destruction that we caused, Martin Luther King looked at the Vietnam War as an environmental issue. And he talked about the environmental impact of dropping Agent Orange and napalm and ruining the forests and all that. Why? Because he had that epochal consciousness that had one foot in the social sciences and one foot in the earth sciences. That is essential at this point. So I hope that I've encouraged you to do what? To begin to have conversations. See, I was at ASU. I've been here, 26 years? Who's been here longer? That's a long time. Anybody been here longer? ASU? Okay, yeah. Well, here's the thing. I remember when the biology folk and the history folk used to hang out. See, when somebody passed away in physical sciences or physical education, you had people from sociology department, people from the theater department, you had people from, we had a beloved community. It was cross-discipline. And it didn't matter whether you were a janitor, whether you worked in on the trash truck or whatever, worked in the cafeteria. You would have people, PhDs, go into the funeral of a custodian.
That's right.
And crying like everybody else. Why? Because we had a better cohesiveness. And do we know that Martin Luther King was able to bridge so many different gaps? And Brother Sable bring in so many, one of the best attorneys in Alabama, would bring in so many different personalities because they were organizing around the truth. We've got to get back into the factual aspect of things. And we've got to begin to employ those facts in order to help our people. Finally, a major issue in Alabama is our health care.
Amen.
Next Tuesday at 12 o'clock, Sister Fire, if I'm right, we're going to have a major rally by Save Ourselves, SOS, on the state, on the State House steps. Why don't you come? If you're afraid, I was a lobbyist for a long time. If you're afraid of knowing how to talk to a legislator, talk to us. We talk to them all the time, and they're people. But when they get on the floor, and when they get amongst their buddies, that's when they become a part of the beast. Because listen, the reason why is because they do not have the moral courage to be an individual.
All right.
And I've seen that. I have seen Republicans who will come to your birthday party. I've seen Republicans who will sit down and shake hands with you. I've seen Republicans that will become your business partner. I've seen Republicans that will come and visit your church, that will introduce themselves, invite you to their children's ball game, all of those types of things. But I have never seen the attitude amongst politicians in my lifetime that I have now. Which means that now people don't even want to sit next to you. They don't even want to touch. And they don't even care whether you're a voter in that district because they know the numbers. They know they don't need your vote because their algorithm has already displayed it. They only go to people who's going to vote for them. And there's nobody there to bridge those gaps. When we talk about transportation, they closed the buses down, did they not? And then the fight became over where you're going to put an interstate. Do you know they ran an interstate right through your economic area here in Montgomery? Now, Ron is not here, but as Anisha talked about, we have this grid called GIS, right? And Global Information Systems operates in lines, dots, and polygons, right? I'll see if I can find it, because I got to show this. Lines, dots, and polygons. I hope I put it on there. Now, the reason why that's important, and that's not it, but I'm going to show you that too. The reason why that's important is because it's right here. Whenever you see a curve, where there should be lines, dots, and polygons, that's because somebody manipulated data to achieve a certain end. See, because things are drawn like this. It's like a county. You never see a county drawn in a curve. It's always a line, a dot, and a polygon. Where does the lawyer learn that from? The geographer. What if that geographer had been there when it was time to defend Holder versus United States? Nobody defends us better than us. But when we allow other people to defend us, whether we know what it is, and we neglect the knowledge that we have right here and depend on somebody and hope they know what we think they know. Whenever you do a curve, look at the way our voting districts are. Right. They're all curves, which means people are manipulating things, brother, outside of the socio-economic line. Which means that in order for you to gerrymander is not unconstitutional. It just can't be done on racial grounds. So when you're drawing a voting district and you use a curve, that data can go to show that what you're trying to do is unconstitutional. Because you manipulated the data to do it. They ran an interstate right through our community. Was that by accident or was it planned? I went to the Department of Transportation to try to get the minutes from the meetings that they had. They conveniently were misplaced. But has anybody done an economic impact study to show just how the black community was hurt by that bridge that was placed there? You saw those guys standing there at that bridge? When they ran that thing through there, it decimated the black community. But it created barriers, mental barriers. Martin Luther King said, and where do we go from here? The two major things that we cannot, our access cannot be limited, that's libraries and parks.
Come on now.
See, because the only place you're going to really get some peace and tranquility is in a park. Yeah. They closed the pools. Do you know how soothing it is to go for a swim? What does swimming do? It releases tension. I did this thing called Black Folk Can't Swim. Well, they closed all the pools. That's right. They closed all the public pools. But that is a part of our mental health. Being in a pool of water calms your nerves. So we take the pool away. Being in a green space, Sarah, is that what we call it? A green space? Well, when you remove the green spaces, where are you going to get any kind of solace? When are you going to get any kind of tranquility? There is none. But you know who does understand the importance of the parks? The drug dealers. You can't go anywhere tranquil without looking over your shoulder. Now, is that just a sad occurrence or is that by design? We don't understand the intellect that we're fighting. We don't understand how committed these people are to accomplishing a profit. Martin Luther King knew that. And toward the end of his life, toward the end of his life, he didn't become very pessimistic. He had a better understanding of the environment of what he was dealing with. And he understood that it was a moral battle and a battle of values, but those to whom he was appealing had none.
That's right. That's right.
So now it becomes a question of culture and it becomes a question of numbers. We have to overpower people because they're not going to change. Because you'll have a person who works for a corporation in their individual capacity will be ever so loving and ever so, but when they come into the corporate veil, it's a totally different ballgame. They have no culture, no ego at all. So I hope that I've encouraged you. I hope you can, if you want me to email you this stuff, I will. My email address is rwhite@alasu.edu, rwhite@alasu.edu. I want to show you this slide too. I got to show you this one. What part of that map is most red? Okay, now you don't know what that is, right? But what that is that's your bread and butter. That is what the black belt has that nobody else in the country has. That is most valuable to what is coming. Not what's here now, but what is what?
Come on down.
Coming. The apostles knew that their time was up. Let me tell you what they knew. They knew Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. They knew that. They knew that their culture was never going to be the same again. They knew that their people were going to be dispersed. And they knew that Rome was going to utterly take over. But they kept pushing because the message became global. Yes. That right there represents the diversity of wildlife and the diversity of vegetation in America. And the area that's in most red is the area that has the highest concentration of diverse species, which is right there in your black belt. So when we began to talk about earth science and areas of the country that are going to be appealing to people who have this consciousness, we better get ready because there's going to be an influx of people coming to this area. And we already have to have mechanisms in place in order to accommodate what's coming. I picked that up at a sociology conference. But my buddy picked it up from an earth science conference. So we have to begin to continue to have these conversations, and let's bring in other parts of the university and let's allow them to provide their own data and their own observations in bringing into what Martin Luther King called the beloved community. Thank you very much.
The bus is outside, so it's going to take you back to the academic room where we will have our afternoon workshop session. This session is titled The Relevancy of Nonviolent Resistance as a Philosophy and Strategy in the Struggle for the Beloved Community. I encourage you all to attend this session. It will be an interactive panel discussion. Our panelists will be Deandra Burns, High School Program Lead for Common Ground Montgomery, Mr. Charles Winnie, Executive Director of That's My Child, Chief Ernest Finley of Montgomery Police Department, and Natalie Magruder, Board Member for East South. Okay. The moderator. I'm sorry. Oh, and the moderator. Let's see, Attorney Anika Jackson, Executive Director of the Selma Center for Nonviolent Resistance, Truth, and Reconciliation.
All right. Everybody, we're ready to go back to the academic invigorated.
Surveillance thing over in the mall. Hey, how you doing, sir? All right. God bless you. Yeah, what's your name? Steve. Okay.